You hear it before you see it, a mechanical roar, short and brutal, echoing down the shattered streets of Stalingrad. It isn't artillery. It isn't a tank. It's the PPSh, the Soviet PPSh-41, spitting 20 rounds every second, its muzzle flashing like a camera gone mad. To the German infantry, that sound meant one thing. The Red Army was too close. No time for artillery. No time to retreat, only seconds before the storm of bullets tore through the rubble. How could such terror come from something so crude? The PPSh-41 wasn't a masterpiece of engineering. It was made from stamped metal, welded by untrained hands in freezing factories. And yet, it became one of the most feared weapons of the entire Eastern Front. A submachine gun so simple, so unstoppable, that even the Wehrmacht began stealing and converting them for their own use. The irony was chilling. The same soldiers who once mocked Soviet industry now trusted a Soviet weapon more than their own. But the truth behind this gun goes beyond steel and firepower. It is a story of desperation, innovation, and survival, forged in a war where mass production meant the difference between extinction and endurance. So how did this humble weapon redefine close-quarters combat and rewrite the psychology of fear in World War II? In 1939, the Soviet Union entered the Winter War against Finland expecting a quick victory. Instead, they were humiliated. Finnish troops, though outnumbered, fought with agility, discipline, and a strange new weapon that the Soviets hadn't taken seriously, the Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. The Red Army's standard rifle, the Mosin Nagant, was powerful but slow. Each shot required a bolt cycle. Every reload cost seconds. The Suomi, with its 71-round drum magazine, could unleash a continuous storm of bullets at close range. Finnish soldiers used it for lightning ambushes in snowy forests, striking Soviet columns, then vanishing into the white. The results were devastating. In dense terrain or urban ruins, the bolt-action rifle became obsolete the moment the Suomi appeared. Soviet officers studying the aftermath wrote that firepower density, not accuracy, decided survival. This revelation sparked a quiet revolution inside Soviet ordnance bureaus. They needed a weapon cheap enough for millions, compact enough for street warfare, and brutal enough to erase the range advantage of the German riflemen. The failure in Finland became the seed of Soviet rearmament. The Red Army had learned a bitter truth. In modern war, volume could defeat precision. Designer Georgy Shpagin stepped forward with a radical idea. Instead of refining the costly PPD-40, the Soviet copy of the Suomi, he proposed simplifying everything. No milled parts, no complex machining, only stamped steel and wood. The result was a Pistolet Pulemyot Shpagina model of 1941, or PPSh-41. Each gun took barely 5.6 man-hours to make. Old Mosin Nagant barrels were cut in half and rechambered for the 7.62 Ki 25mm Tokarev round. The entire process could be done in makeshift workshops far from the front. Workers without formal training, sometimes women, sometimes teenagers, could assemble them under candlelight while German bombers droned overhead. This industrial pragmatism was wartime genius. The PPSh wasn't just a weapon, it was an ideology of mass survival. While Germany obsessed over mechanical precision, the Soviets built for endurance. By late 1942, over 5 million units had been produced, an unimaginable number compared to the 1 million MP-40s fielded by Germany. The Soviet strategy was brutally simple. Every platoon would saturate the battlefield with automatic fire. When Operation Barbarossa shattered the Red Army's ranks, these weapons became the equalizer, the sound of resistance hammered from steel and desperation. Before the PPSh, submachine guns were reserved for officers, tank crews, or elite assault units. The Soviet command inverted that logic. If close quarters combat defined the Eastern Front, then every soldier should wield the weapon built for it. By mid-1942, entire companies, hundreds of men, were armed solely with PPSh-41s. Training films showed recruits firing in synchronized bursts, moving like a wave of thunder through ruined cities. The doctrine emphasized speed over precision. Fire first, overwhelm, advance. This shift wasn't theoretical. It rewrote the character of infantry warfare itself. Instead of disciplined rifle lines, battles devolved into chaotic brawls fought at 50 meters or less. The PPSh's 900 round per minute rate of fire made it an instrument of suppression, not marksmanship. Soviet divisions learned to hug the enemy, fight so close that German artillery couldn't be used without hitting their own men. It was brutal, costly, and effective. The PPSh-41 became both a symbol and a survival tool, the weapon of a nation that refused to die. Stalingrad was not just a battlefield, it was a labyrinth of steel and concrete, designed by accident for the PPSh-41's brutal efficiency. Here, sightlines vanished after 20 meters. Snipers had no fields of fire, and machine guns jammed with dust and debris. The war devolved into an endless maze of stairwells, hallways, and shattered rooms, the kind of terrain where a weapon's range mattered less than its rate of fire. General Vasily Chuikov of the 62nd Army understood this instinctively. He introduced a strategy the Germans would come to fear: hugging the enemy. Soviet troops fought at such close distance that artillery and airstrikes became useless. The PPSh-41 was the perfect instrument, compact, rugged, capable of drowning an entire floor in bullets before an MG-42 could even pivot. Eyewitness reports describe storm groups of 6 to 8 soldiers, each carrying a PPSh, grenades, and a knife, slipping through walls and rubble. They attacked at night, bursting into rooms and spraying 70 rounds in seconds. The noise was deafening. The effect was psychological annihilation. To the Germans, this wasn't combat. It was chaos in human form, a blur of fire, shouting, and smoke punctuated by the unrelenting roar of the PPSh. Among German veterans, the PPSh-41 gained a grim nickname, Rasender Tod, Raging Death. Its firing signature was unmistakable, a rolling thunder of rapid, metallic bursts that echoed through ruins and across trenches. Soldiers could tell instantly when a Soviet assault was imminent. Unlike the sharper crack of rifles or the heavy rhythm of the MG-42, the PPSH's chatter was wild, almost mechanical and human, and it never came alone. A single burst meant dozens more. Entire Soviet platoons fired simultaneously, filling the air with shockwaves that made it impossible to locate the source. German field diaries recorded that when the PPSH spoke, the street belonged to them. Units caught in these urban ambushes often panicked, abandoning their positions before physical contact even occurred. The fear was not irrational. In less than 4 seconds, one PPSH could empty its 71-round drum, enough to turn a confined basement into a death trap. Psychologists studying post-war testimonies noted that veterans still remembered the sound before the faces. The PPSH's voice became synonymous with Soviet ferocity, a crude but perfect instrument of psychological warfare. When the ruins of Stalingrad fell silent, that sound lingered in memory longer than the city's name itself. By late 1942, the German Sixth Army's attitude toward the PPSH shifted from horror to grudging admiration. They began capturing and using the weapon themselves. Thousands were rechambered to fire the 919mm parabellum round, compatible with MP40 magazines. The Wehrmacht even issued conversion kits under the designation MP41ER, but many soldiers preferred the original Soviet version. The 7.62 Kek 25mm Tokarev cartridge had higher muzzle velocity, greater penetration, and astonishing reliability. It could punch through brick walls, helmets, and even light cover at ranges the MP40 could not match. And the PPSH itself, ugly, heavy, imprecise, almost never failed to fire. In the freezing mud of the Eastern Front, where lubricants froze and mechanisms jammed, precision machining was a liability. Rugged simplicity became superiority. German engineering had produced elegance. The Soviets had produced endurance. Frontline soldiers joked bitterly, "We have the better designers, but they have the better weapon for hell." That irony became the defining theme of the Eastern Front: industrial desperation defeating mechanical perfection. When Berlin finally fell, millions of PPSH-41s still lined Soviet depots. Unlike many wartime weapons that vanished with the peace treaties, the PPSh endured. It required no upkeep beyond a rag and oil, and ammunition was abundant. Within months, it was reissued to satellite armies across Eastern Europe. From Korea to Vietnam, it reappeared in new hands. From Chinese volunteers crossing the Yalu River to Viet Minh fighters ambushing French columns in jungle valleys. In those wars, the PPSH-41 served the same role it had in Stalingrad: overwhelming fire at close range in terrain where visibility was measured in meters. American troops in Korea recalled night assaults lit by muzzle flashes, a triple-pronged jet of flame, identical to what German soldiers once feared. Its distinctive noise, like a metallic drum roll, marked another era of asymmetric warfare. Cheap weapons in endless numbers defeating armies built on precision. Even as assault rifles like the AK-47 replaced it, the PPSh remained symbolic, a relic of total war's industrial philosophy. It was the sound of a nation proving that mass production could be as decisive as strategy. It was not beautiful nor elegant, but it outlived every theory of combat that had once dismissed it. The PPSh-41 blurred the line between technology and psychology. It wasn't a better gun in the technical sense. Its accuracy was poor, recoil harsh, and safety design primitive. Yet it achieved what few weapons ever do. It reshaped behavior. Soviet doctrine changed around it. German tactics adapted to counter it. Entire urban engagements were rewritten in its rhythm. Its story reflects the brutal logic of industrial warfare and that sometimes quantity becomes its own form of quality. The gun's real legacy isn't in its statistics, but in what it revealed. That fear can be manufactured just as efficiently as steel. Every round fired from a PPSh was not only a bullet, but a message that the Soviet Union could replace every man, every weapon, and every loss faster than its enemy could respond. That philosophy would carry into the Cold War, where ideology itself became mass-produced. The PPSh was the prototype not only of a weapon, but of a mindset, unyielding, pragmatic, and terrifying in its simplicity. Today, surviving PPSh-41s rest behind museum glass, their wooden stocks worn smooth by 1,000 hands. Visitors see a crude submachine gun, stamped metal, dented drums, faded serials. But behind that simplicity lies an uncomfortable truth about the 20th century. Progress in war often came from desperation, not genius. For the Germans, it was the weapon that shattered the myth of technological superiority. For the Soviets, it became proof that survival could be engineered. When historians speak of tanks, planes, or generals, the PPSh rarely takes center stage. Yet in the alleys of Stalingrad, in the frozen forests of Karelia, and later in the jungles of Asia, it was this unassuming machine that turned the tide of battles fought face to face. The PPSh-41 was never meant to last forever, but its echo still lingers, a mechanical heartbeat from an era when fear had a sound.